Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the next dungeon guide for Season 4 of Dragonflight. We're going to go with Halls of Infusion today. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the Algathar Academy guide from last week. I'll try to get these out a little bit more consistently. I've just been pushing a lot of keys and trying to get the best videos and VODs for you guys so I could explain all the mechanics. But without further ado, let's go in. This is just a quick 15 Halls of Infusion on Tyrannical Week. We will start the key. Now, these pulls are going to be quite big. You don't have to do these pulls at all. This is just me trying to do this dungeon as fast as possible. Again, this is all subject to your comp and what tank you play. This is purely from a VDH standpoint, so if you can't do these pulls on a different tank, it's okay. We're going to start off by hugging the left side and pulling pretty much everything down except for this right pack here. I'm going to pull it down to LOS it at the bottom of the stairs here. Now, we've got a bunch of mobs coming in. We have Geomancers, we have Ravagers, we have Containment Apparatuses, and we also have Defenders. Now, you can see Geomancers, they're going to do an ability called Seismic Slam. They're going to jump around, put a swirl on the ground, and they're going to stun anyone that's in it and do a lot of damage. Apparatuses are going to cast something called Expulse. You need to interrupt it, otherwise it hurts a lot and does an AoE damage. Also does a containment beam that you need to stop, otherwise it channels onto a person and does a considerable amount of damage as well. It is tyrannical, it doesn't do as much damage, still good to get used to it just in case you go into Fort Week and you don't interrupt it or stun it. Defenders do Demoralizing Shout, you need to interrupt it, reduces everyone's damage by 20%, not good. And then Defenders do Spear Flurry. You can see these markers over here. They do a frontal. Just make sure the tank's facing it away from everyone, no one's in front of the tank, and just move to the side, otherwise you get a nasty bleed. That's about it. The only problem with these pulls is they have to be coordinated quite well. So we pop Lust here, chuck everything down. Well, everything is still trickling in, so I do end up having a bit of issues with aggro at the start. The boys are pumping pretty hard here, so we just need to make sure that we are calling our kicks and our stuns and our knockbacks and all that to make sure everything does die. Now it is incorporeal and spiteful, so we need to save our individual stuns and our long CCs for the incorporeals so we don't end up having those go off. And then spitefuls come out, so there's more pad and more funnel for the Shadow Priest and the Frost Mage to get their frozen orbs back and to blast a single target. Again, these pulls are quite large. Just be a bit wary, don't go too crazy. We continue over here. There's an orb over here on the right hand side here. This is the engineering orb. Now what this does is it gives you the engineering bonus if you have an engineer in your group and you do have 25 engineering, which is the minimum. You can get a buff called Limited Immortality. It'll prevent someone in your party from dying. So it's pretty much another cheat death in your group, which is quite nice. Just in case you do end up needing that extra B-res, you can just have someone... if they do end up dying, they just won't die, which is really, really helpful. If you don't have an engineer, you can just skip that pack and do a different pack later, because we do skip some stuff later. Now here, we're just about to finish this pull off. I'm going to go into the next pull. I'm going to pull the right mobs, and also the left mobs. Now make sure if you are pulling big like this, you need to, because you are the first point of contact as the tank, as the tank, you want to make sure you're using your AoE stuns and AoE CCs first, so then everyone else can start ramping their DPS. You don't want to, unless you absolutely have nothing, you probably shouldn't do these type of pulls. If you have absolutely nothing, just take your time with it, don't go too crazy. Only do it if you have the means and the tools in order to execute it properly, otherwise you're just wiping your group for no reason. So we're going to blast these mobs. I did this as well because we did have our 2-minute cooldowns up, and you can track those 2-minute cooldowns over here. At the moment I'm using an add-on called Omni CD, so you can download that. I highly recommend that. Now once those start falling over, I just chain pull into there, because I know I have a stun up just in case I need to stop the first initial abilities. And once that's taken care of, we go over down to the first boss. Now the first boss here is Watcher Irideus. Pretty decent healing check for these bosses on Halls of Infusion in Tyrannical. So with Watcher Irideus, I'm going to have a Frontal here, which is just Titanic Fist, just dodge, make sure you don't face the group. We're going to have Static Surge, which is a pulsing AoE. Make sure the healer has some sort of ramp going on, or some sort of healing cooldowns, to make sure everyone is using defensive if the healer doesn't have a cooldown. And it's just going to rotate between 3 or 4 abilities in the first phase. Power Overload is going to put 2 debuffs onto these players, which can be mass dispelled, as you can see here, and it's going to leave a pool on the ground, which will eventually disappear. Then it'll put Spark Volley, which you just have to dodge the swirls, and you're just going to rinse and repeat. We're going to continue up until the boss gets to 15%. Okay, the boss is now at 15%. It's going to go into the middle. Now, I placed the boss on the outer rim, purely for the fact that it has a walk-in time, and you can make phase 2 shorter if you either push him over 15% during a cast, or you pull him as far away from the middle as possible so he has time to walk in there. You can do a bit of extra damage just to make sure that second phase is a little bit nicer for you. Just a little bit of a tip there for higher keys. Now he's going to go into this phase, put a barrier on himself so he's not going to take any damage. There's no point hitting him right now. You want to kill these nullification devices. There's going to be 4 of them. You need to place them on top of the boss. There needs to be at least 3 of them on the boss. Now these Purifying Blasts are going to target random players. You need to make sure you stop them. As you can see, we're rotating AoE CCs. They do a lot of damage and they leave a nasty dot, so make sure you are stopping those. And they will put a circle down that will explode and will remove the shield that is on the boss, which is those stacks that are on him. He has 3 at the moment. So as long as 3 of them hit him, he's good, which is the Ablative Barrier. And then it's going to just repeat phase 1, except for the only difference is that the boss is going to do more damage because it has a buff now, which as you can see by the 20 stacks above its head, if you saw that. Which is going to have its Siphon Power, which is the ability there, which it will increase his nature damage done by 2% per stack. So that should be a total of 40% extra damage, which is pretty substantial. That's why you kind of want to have some pretty big cooldowns going into this phase and not use too much during the first phase. Now the only difference is that gain in damage, as well as if you noticed the power overloads, they actually increased in size quite drastically. So now they take up pretty much half the room, so you want to move quite far away. So the next portion of the dungeon, after we finished Watcher Irideus, we're going to go up here, and you can kill these mobs if you want. There are 2 invis mobs right here, which are both going to cast abilities that you need to... there's 1 invis mob that you need to take out before it stuns you. If you don't end up hitting it before it hits you, it should be right in front of here or behind here. You will get stunned and you will probably die. It does a lot of damage. These shock troopers, you need to make sure you're interrupting their abilities. We'll come to these later. But right now, in this specific run, we're going to walk past them with a Mind Soothe. I'm going to imprison the left one just to make sure we don't end up pulling it. And we're just going to walk around. As long as you hug the wall, you can skip these. This is a very It's not a good trash pack to do. There's not really much going on there. You can do this pull much easier. So with these, we're going to have these frogs, these swoglets. They are not going to have an aggro table. They're just going to attack random people and put this nasty dot on them, which you need to dispel. Make sure you are running away from them. If they're targeting you, DPS and healers, you will know if they're targeting you. Obviously, it'll show on your frames. The Zealot is just going to do a lot of damage. Dragonflies are going to do frontals, which will stun you or disorient you. You need to make sure you're facing them away from the group, or you are interrupting them. Now, I'm grabbing all of these. I know a lot of you guys probably don't even know that there are mobs around here, or you don't even bother taking these mobs, but this specific pull is very, very good for high keys. So you're going to grab a bunch of these, because all you have to do with the Dragonflies is kind of just dodge the frontal or interrupt it, and that's it. So you want to grab, as you can see, we put a blizzard down to make sure that these came out, and I used my spectral sight to try and find where they were. But we did get them out beforehand. Sometimes you go in here and you do end up getting stunned and the pull just kind of wipes the group. So you need to make sure that this comes out before you end up going down the stairs. Now we're going to grab everything, and I'm just pulling everything down. I'm telling all of them, just make sure you're following, group them all up, make sure everyone's pulling their swoglets that are targeting on them into the same area, so I can just grip them all and we can just absolutely obliterate them with AoEs. So here again, you've got 2 stealthies in the front. Make sure you put your sigil there, grab those out, otherwise you get stunned. These 3 elemental focuses need to come off, and you see there, right there, that 1 elemental focus going off on a tyrannical almost killed everybody. So we need to make sure that those are getting CC'd. And you want to make sure you get these paretic bursts, because they do hurt the tank a lot, but you also want to get a very specific ability called Cauterize from this Flamecaller, which will heal it by quite a substantial amount. Not a full heal, but it's still quite a lot. You've got the Flamecaller doing Magma Crash as well, which is just that big swirl there. And then you've got the Squallbringer, which is just going to summon a bunch of adds and do that whirlwind on the ground. You definitely want to be cleaving off of Flamecaller. Flamecaller is the one that everyone wants to be targeting and just constantly interrupting. And have someone saving their kick for their Cauterize. The Cauterize usually only starts coming out after 50% on the boss's health, or on the mini-boss's health pool. Which at this point we have our Shadow Priest saving the kick for it. Once these guys are dead, we're going to move on to Gulping Goliath, the next boss. On a side note, with the Gulping Goliath, make sure you pick up this mushroom here if you do have a herbalist in your group, which is very, very, very pivotal to help with dispels on specifically these Swoglets as well as the Gulping Goliath, because the Swoglets are in the Gulping Goliath fight as well. It will help tremendously in alleviating the amount of mana consumed by dispelling people constantly if you do get stacks of this. And it just helps a lot, because it'll cure one application of a poison or a disease effect every 5 seconds to a random person in the party that has it available to them. So it's really, really, really strong if you're doing especially a high tyrannical key. Alright, now we're back on the boss. We're going to start the pull here. Not too many abilities here, it's pretty self-explanatory. You've got Overpowering Croak, which is the massive AoE it does. Make sure you're using a defensive or you have some sort of healing going on. Now the AoE will summon these Swoglets that we did fight before. Now the whole point of this is you want to make sure they're grouped up, and you want to make sure the boss eats them in that green circle around them. Otherwise they're going to stay there, going to keep putting that debuff on you, and you're going to eventually just tick away and die to the damage. Now this Toxic Effluvia is also the same thing as the Overpowering Croak, does a big AoE damage. It's also going to do Belly Slam, which will just target a player and do a massive AoE slam. Obviously, make sure you're out of that. And pretty much, there's been a bit of confusion on like who takes and why you take the gulp at the same time as the boss taking the adds. It's because you don't want the boss to berserk. If there's not a singular player in the AoE when the Swoglets get gulped, the boss will berserk, and yeah, let's just say that doesn't end well for anyone. Sometimes the boss does pick you up and just fling you across the room. I'm not too sure why sometimes it does that and sometimes it doesn't. Maybe someone can tell me that, because I personally never found out. I just thought it was a random occurrence. But leave it in the comment section below if you do know why that does that. But yeah, you're pretty much just making sure you have some sort of CC, make sure they're constantly there. If your DPS are not like on the opposite side of the boss, kind of kiting the adds that are fixated on them towards the same location, and everyone's just kind of spread in different directions, it's infinitely harder for the tank to kind of keep everything together. So make sure you're all standing together, moving together, and all the adds will go in the same direction, so then the tank can kind of pull the boss alongside the adds moving along with you guys. So it makes it that much easier for the adds to all get gulped up instead of just having a few strays running about. So you see how all the rest of them group up, and we're all just in the same area, same direction, we're moving as a team. Very simple. Standard boss. Moving on. Moving on to this hallway here, we're going to have a Proto-Dragon here, and we're going to have the Earthshaker and the Ice Crawler here. Now, they're down the bottom, so I'm waiting for them to patrol back up. Glacial Proto-Dragon will do that AoE there, which is going to put a giant debuff on everyone, which does a lot of damage. You can dispel it, so we have a Priest Mass dispel it once every while whenever they have it up. Then it's going to do this Frontal Breath as well. Now, as a tank, you can run away from this breath and outrange it. You don't have to take it. Right now, it's just a 15 Tyran. I feel comfortable taking it. It's not a problem for me. I can just heal it back up. You've got the Ice Caller that keeps pumping shards into you. It's going to hurt. You just have to deal with it. You can stun them if you want to. It's also going to do a healing ability, which you need to interrupt. The Earth Shaker is going to do a circle around it, which is going to stun you and do a lot of damage. And that is about it. Very simple mechanics for these pulls. Once this pack is down, we're going to do a double pull on the next pack. It's going to be the same mobs as before. We've got Earth Shapers, we've got Ice Callers, and we've got the Proto Drake. Now we have an additional Gale Slinger, or 2 of them in this pack specifically. All they're going to do is cast an ability called Thunder Strike. You just need to use a defensive if you're at low HP, because it does a small AoE. That's about it. That's all you really have to worry about. You can stun it, you can knock it up, you can fear it. Just make sure you're timing your stuff properly. This pack is not a problem. Obviously on Fortify it's a little bit spicier, but it's okay. No problems at all. Now, when we get to the next pull, once we kill all these mobs, this we're going to skip in this specific scenario. We're just going to skip it. So all you do, you don't need a Mind Soothe here. You can just CC this mob. So I can just imprison this if I want to. But we do Mind Soothe anyway. And you just want to jump up on the right side of this. No, you do not need double jump. It just makes it easier for me. You're just going to hug the right wall. And no, you will not pull the Drake. You are out of sight of the Drake. As long as you jump up on the right wall and you hug it nice and tight, you'll be able to jump down and you can skip that pack. No problems. With my specific route here, or the route that we're doing, we don't need to deal with that pack. So right now we're going to pull arguably the hardest healing fight in the game, with the healing check being insanely high. The only thing is, it's consistent damage. It's not burst damage, so it's quite easy for some healers to deal with it, especially Resto Druids, because they have a lot of consistent healing over time. Some healers will have a little bit more problems. So the abilities here, you've got pretty much the way the boss works is you've got these ice tombs around the area, or these blocks of ice, and you want to make sure that you're using them to dodge a certain ability that the boss does. Now we'll go through these abilities right now. We've got the first ability, which is the Frost Cyclone. If this cyclone hits one of the ice blocks, it's going to either burst them or it's going to crack them. Now, if you saw that one before, it was kind of like whiter and it had a bit more cracks in there, while these ones are solid. And you can tell, they've added a visual recently. You can tell which ones are cracked and which ones aren't by if they have a visual of a circle around them when the boss casts Hailstorm, which is going to be pretty much the one-shot mechanic that you need to hide behind one of these for. So if it doesn't have a circle around them, you're safe. Just make sure you hide behind it before the Hailstorm goes off. If it does have one, make sure you're away from it, because it will explode if it's cracked. As you can see, it's cracked now. It will explode and will do a shit ton of damage to you, and you will die. Then it'll put a Frost Shock on the tank. The Frost Shock just makes you slow. It's not really that bad. You can just dispel it. Glacial Surge will be small circle, another circle around it, another circle around it. So just a small ring, medium ring, big ring. Just make sure you jump out, jump back in. Very easy. That's literally the fight. Rinse, repeat. The healer just has to go. And as you can see, our healer is absolutely insane, doing about 550k healing per second. I think ends the fight at about 600 and still has mana left over, which is pretty insane for a healing check on a 15 Tyrannical, if I do say so myself. Let's just see what they end up at. So by the end of it there, they're at about 580,000 HPS. That's insane. Okay, well, we finished the boss there. So far, very clean run, no problems. We're going to go into the Gauntlet. Now, this Gauntlet has killed many people. You need to make sure you're watching out here. Now, as the tank, you're going to grab all these mobs. You can pull this mob by itself with the mobs next to it and hide behind this well of this water well in the middle, or you can just go to the Drake like I'm doing right now. And as long as you're in right next to this well in the middle, you'll be okay, and that wave that's coming along will not hit you. You can move to the side if you want to, but just to be safe. Now again, we've got some of the familiar faces here. We've got the Proto Drake doing that frontal, which is, make sure you move out of it. For this specific one, you kind of have to take it, and you just have to use defensives. There's not really any way to run out of it, because if you move it, it's kind of making it harder for the DPS to do their job, and you might end up running into a wave, and you might get knocked off, and there's a lot of problems that can happen. You've also got the same Ice Caller and the Earth Shaper as before in the tunnel before the third boss. You want to make sure you're interrupting those, stunning those, moving out of the circle, so on and so forth. And now you've got these new things called Aqua Rages. Now all they're going to do is cast an ability called Boiling Rage, which will make them enraged, doing more damage. You don't really have to interrupt these, but you can AoE stun them. And then when they're about to die, that is when you need to make sure you stop them. Because this is an important ability you need to prevent, which is called Tidal Divergence. Now, what this does is if you don't stop it or kill it before this cast goes off, it will spawn and break into about 5 or 6 droplets, and they will all cast abilities, and if those go off, it's pretty much a wipe. So you want to make sure that you're really taking care of these mobs and killing them as quick as possible or stopping their cast. Now once we've done with this first part of the gauntlet, move on to the next part of the gauntlet. Same mobs, same stuff, nothing different. Yeah? You got your Gale Singers there as well, does a little bit of an AoE, no problems. Ice Caller, Aqua Rager, same. Now, the problem with this part of the instance is the mini-boss coming up. On Fortified, this is an absolute menace. On Tyrannical, it's still a menace, but it's a little bit easier. Now, Inundate is an unavoidable ability only if you outrange it. So that is what a ranged comp has against a melee comp here. A melee comp, though, is more sustainable regardless, just innately, so they will be able to just take the brunt of the hit and heal themselves back up. But a ranged comp, at a certain level, you're going to have to just outrange it, so you want to be at max range with the healer, and then move back out of range as soon as they start casting, or Inundate's about to finish casting. And the only other thing you need to worry about here is Flash Flood, just don't be in melee, very simple. And then Aqueous Barrier, which if it goes off will put a barrier on them. You can dispel the barrier, I'm pretty sure. So it's not the biggest deal, but you want to make sure you do end up stopping that. Now we've finished all of that, we're up to the last boss of the instance, which is Primal Tsunami. They did change this recently to only go down once, to give you one phase of running back to it, instead of doing it multiple times on a timer, so it is much easier than it used to be. In terms of the time frame you can take to kill it in a tyrannical key. So the abilities is going to be, it's going to have Squall Buffet, which is going to knock the tank back. The tank must be back near the boss by the time it starts casting Focus Deluge, otherwise it will hit the nearest target or cast on the nearest target, and it has killed a lot of melee. This is very common. You just want to make sure you get there and have some sort of movement speed to get back. Always make sure you're using it defensive. I'm using Feldev to make sure I don't die. And you want to make sure you're dodging these circles on the ground as well. Now the circles come out with infused globules, which will summon the circles. Then it will cast an ability to pop the circles, which is Tempest Fury, which you want to make sure you're dodging. Now remember, you can bait where these circles spawn. You want to make sure you're baiting on one side, so then you have room on the other side. If you bait everywhere, then it's much harder for everyone to kind of just find a gap. So as you can see, we've all kind of baited on one side, we're all moving to the other side now to make sure we're safe. Which is the correct way to do this, because they do move around during the fight, and you want to be as safe as possible. Now remember, when it does cast Tempest Fury, it does do an AoE as well, so you want to make sure you are safe and you are not taking too much damage, using it defensive if you need to. Now this boss acts the same way as Watcher Irideus, where the longer it takes for you to get there and finish off all the ads, because the ads are casting on the boss at the moment, once you kill all these ads, then it'll stop casting and giving the boss a buff. So it's infusing the boss right now. The longer this takes, the more damage this boss is going to do in the second phase. So what we're doing here is I'm asking everyone to pick a color, and we're all going to interrupt at the same time, and then we're going to all use our CCs to stop them from casting their ability, which does a lot of damage to the group. So we've interrupted 3 of them. There's 1 coming in. I'm going to group them together, and they're all going to cast that ability that we just talked about from the mini-boss, Inundate, where you're supposed to max range it. At this time, unfortunately, in the boss, you can't. So you want to make sure you kill them as quick as possible. we're just going to use our AoE stuns and AoE stops. That was a very close call there. I'm pretty sure one or two of them were about to go off. Probably like 1/10 of a second there. But we did get a Dragon's Breath, and my fear went off at just the last second. And then we're going to go for phase 2. And this is pretty much it. The boss is going to have a few stacks of the buff. It's going to do quite a lot of damage on the Tempest Fury, which, as you saw, our priest almost died just by having that. But then it's just a rinse and repeat until you finish the key. And there you have it, guys. A nice, easy, and quick 15 tyrannical Halls of Infusion. Hopefully that helped you guys out with any questions and queries you had with the dungeon. If you do have any more questions, please feel free to put them in the comment section below, or come to my Twitch and ask me in there at twitch.tv/triplebs. I will be live every single day except for Thursdays for Australia. Besides that, yeah, chuck me a follow, give me a like, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more, and I will continue making these as long as I can. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out. Stay safe.